I think there's one called a convention of hares, because hares seem to stand around, in a circle sometimes. But he manages to get a big shower of these hares up to a big house in Tara in the centre of Ireland. And this is a house with 9 open doorways. And he gets all these hares into this house, and by dint of running around and hooshing them in, that's a technical term. He managed to keep the hares inside this house, so he must have been very fast and fleet on his feet. Creature means sort of fair-haired, and he's got the fleet of foot is his nickname. Creature MacRonan, Creature son of Ronan. He gets into a bit of a row with a witch figure on Banada, which is Hope, which is the north side of Dublin Bay. But there's one story that comes from Galway, and it's a more recent one, and it's about how the High King, the Ordinary, needs an athlete for a very, very special task. So word is sent out around Ireland, and of course various athletes come hoping to get the job. Well, the first athlete who comes in, he comes up to the Ordinary, the High King, who's sitting there on his throne, and this athlete said, I believe you need somebody very fast on his feet, your worship. And he says, yes, here's what I want you to do. I want you to run from Tara here all the way over to the west coast of Ireland to Carna in County Galway, and I want you to scoop up a handful of sand off the beach and bring it back to me so I can smell that sand and know whether or not a foreign foot has landed on the island overnight, and whether I have to send word to the Fianna to put together a posse of warriors to defend Ireland. After that, you're to run up north to McGilligan Strand and scoop up a handful of sand from the beach there and bring that back to me. And after that, you're to head east and go to Gorey in County Wexford and scoop up a handful of sand there. And after that, down to Bannistrand in Kerry, and again bring me back a handful of sand. All this before breakfast. A tall order. Well, in the old days, athletes were really athletes, and this athlete says, I can do that, oh High King, I can do that sooner than the time it takes for a leaf to fall from a tree and land at your royal feet. And the High King is very impressed. He says, you're probably the man for the job. Have to see a few more people that would be in touch. So the second athlete comes in and he's told what the job spec is, and he says, I can do that, oh High King, I can do that sooner than the time it takes for a tear to fall from your eye and land on your royal knee, seeing as you're sitting on your royal throne at the moment. And the king is once more very, very impressed, and he says, have to see him in person, we'll be in touch. Now, if you know anything about stories, these things do tend to happen in threes, except, if the Arabian Nights and all those great Muslim treasuries of tales, sometimes it's 9 there. Anyway, this is a 3-part story. Who comes in? Only our friend Creature MacRonan. And the king explains what the job entails, zigzagging up and down across Ireland, bringing back lumps of the beach before breakfast. And Creature says, I can do that, O High King. I can do that sooner than the time it takes for a woman to change her mind. And the High King says, you've got the job, Creature. Can you do that for me? And Creature says, I've already done it, Your Majesty. Now, I noticed that not all of the women laughed. But I honestly tell that story as a tribute to that great talent that girls and women have for changing their minds. Don't let any man ever tell you that it's not a great talent. Because maybe as long as women have that talent for changing their minds, who knows, someday there may be hope for a wretch like me. Did I get away with that? So that's a little story of Creature. How are we for time? Liz, you wanted me to tell some stories, some PJ stories, yeah. There are different kinds of storytelling and stories, of course, and in the American tradition, let's say, apart from personal tales, which are very popular in America, and indeed our Liz here is excellent at that, you also have the tall tale and the shaggy dog tale, and some of these stories that appear in different parts of the world, they just seemingly appear in some of the stories I tell were stories that I know were collected by folklorists in Ireland in like the 1920s and 30s. Humorous tales, some collected in the northern counties by a guy called Michael J. Murphy. I've since found that the same stories were collected in the Ozarks in the same decade, you know. So how stories move around, it's hard to know. Sometimes, there's a friend I knew at age, she's a storyteller. She was down here actually, I believe, during the week. You know, there's a perennial question, where do stories come from? Where do they start? Or jokes and that, you know. And there's a Scottish comedian, Phil Kay is his name, and he says, I don't know where jokes and stories start, but I know where they all end up. In Germany. They don't go any further, but that's not fair. I know some fine German stories. So anyway, yeah, these stories are set in Cavan, which is an Ulster county, south of the border, down Monaghan way. And they concern a couple of a lot of characters appear in different stories, and the main character, he's sort of a trickster character. His name is P.J. Galligan. I like the accent too, it's quite musical. P.J. Galligan. Oh, a right divil he was too. His mother, the Lord of mercy on her, she used to say that P.J. was born with a wooden spoon in his mouth. He's been stirring it up ever since. They broke the mould before P.J. was born. And we have an out saying up in the county having about someone like PJ. His heart is in the right place, but his head is full of mad dog shite. If you'll pardon the Esperanto. Saying PJ, he spoke Esperanto like a native. He had various scams going on down through the years. He had a demolition company going one time, Galligan Destruction, he called it. And he had a slogan, Galligan Destruction, jobs done at knockdown prices. Estimates cheap. And he got this slogan written up on the side of the van. A local art student, this fellow, he would have been one of the Dailies, the eldest Daily from Kilnacroft up the way. What's his name? Salvador was the young fella's name. Well, Salvador Daly was very good at the painting and that, and he painted up the slogan on the side of the van. Peter had a fellow working for him one time called Philly Brady, and Philly was a fierce man to walk. Big pair of hands on him like two bunches of bananas. And he would work for Europe. Heard out Philly, sad to say, one day didn't he die on the job. PJ reversed the digger over him. JCB we call it. Beyond in America, I was telling you a few times, it's what you'd call a backhoe. You know the thing that has an arm there for digging up the back. We call it a JCB, and PJ, and by the way, I was talking about hares earlier, jackrabbits, you knew what I was talking about. PJ reversed the JCB over poor Philly a couple of times.